सर्वधर्मान् परित्यज्य मामेकं शरणं व्रज.
The miseries of material existence and the most hopeless conditions of life is the best possible opportunity to turn to God.
Bare Knuckle Bhakti presents The Gift of Desperation, a Bhakti recovery podcast. This is a 12-step based Bhakti-oriented space. Here we share our experience, strength, and hope in the spirit of recovery from addictions and associated behaviors. Welcome. Step 4. Hello. This is the continuation of the mini-series. I am on the Step Workshop mini-series. I am on step 4. We are on step 4. We are on step 4. So if you're just listening to this for the first time, go back. We have steps 1, 2, and 3. And step 4 is for many people, the big one, the very big one. That's when we make a fearless and moral inventory of ourselves. Don't get scared. Especially with the word moral. I would say, our own standards, and that would be our morals. That's how I kind of measured it. And I think if we look deeply, and if anyone's truly working a program, we're going to know that our standards for ourselves are, either based in a 12-step program or in spiritual principles, whatever that is. I think a lot of people get shot, they get sort of like turned off by the word moral inventory, sort of like make a list of all of the sins, quote unquote, that I've committed in my life. I didn't see it that way. And I still don't see it that way. Unless there are people who need to do that, and hey, welcome, do that, do whatever it takes to get that step done. And this is why it's really important, especially with these steps, like steps 4 and 5 and 8 and 9, is to have a sponsor or somebody who is guiding you through this. We're going to need another set of eyes on that. And, because after step 4, step 5, and that's, admit to God, to ourselves, and another human being, the exact nature of what we had just written, in the 4th step. So it's important to have someone guiding us through that. So my experience with step 4 was actually not the big thing that many people experienced. There are so many different experiences with step 4 and step 5. They're coupled. If you do a step 4 and don't do step 5, it just you've just done a third of it, which means admitted to ourselves, which is step, we did make that moral inventory, but then it just sits in the drawer. And that just means, okay, yeah, we've become aware of the things, of all of the things, all of our resentments and everything else that holds us back. But then it doesn't do anything. It just stays in our drawer and doesn't go further. I've done that before. I've done many 4 steps, and I've had a few just sit in my drawer. It's not recommended. I don't recommend that. But step 4 is really just about finding the commonality in our actions and our triggers and our fears and our resentments. Behind every resentment that we have, there is fear or deep sadness. And when you really do an inventory, you will find that. And the common denominator, the things that you'll see a pattern, and this is what we're looking for. So if you have somebody doing a 5th step with you after you've done that 4th step, you will see, and that person is experienced and knows what to look for, you will see that they will find your common denominator in these resentments and bring them to your attention. And that's the only way that we can correct or do better. Even if we can't correct it, we can do better. We can always do better. We have the choice to do better. Once we're working a program, once we're in attached to kind of our spiritual, because we have steps 1, 2, and 3, and that sort of had the foundation of coming to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us. And we admit we were powerless, then we had faith, and then we give that over to God. And the next phase of the 12 steps is kind of okay, we have that now, and we've admitted it, and we've given it over, and now we need to dig. We need to dig. And it is really important. So my experience was not the burning bush experience. I actually had a burning bush experience in the second step when I really realized that there was a God, and that God would and could restore me to sanity. This was a revelation, literally kind of like it was really a spiritual experience. And everyone, anyone who's had spiritual experiences will tell you it's really something that, for me, it wasn't like this, like, oh, okay, I do this work. And it literally just hit me like a brick. I just sat there and was weeping in joy, weeping in relief. And then sort of in the lap of gratitude, falling in the lap of gratitude, and tears of joy were streaming down my face in step 2. I'll never forget that. And I was just sitting in some stairwell somewhere, reading my NA book and reading the basic text and reading about step 2. And it was as if just this like a whole room of bricks that I've been carrying on my shoulder, just not even just falling, just sort of being lifted. It was the most beautiful experience, I think. And I've heard that happening in step 4 with people. I've heard that. In step 4, of course, alcoholics and addicts, we do a lot of harm to others. And I think I'm one of the varieties. Women especially are, men tend to, I don't want to generalize, but I think, male energies, let's put it that way, tend to steal and rob, and women do it too, but generally, like, sort of that's their thing, to get money and cheat people and blah, 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 blah. And I think a lot of women will just start selling themselves, or, of course they'll cheat and lie. Like, we all cheat and lie somehow to the extent, but I think that female energy is more hurting ourselves. I think we tend to take more upon ourselves to hurt ourselves. So step 4, finding that out. And, I think a lot of people release a lot of forgiveness and guilt when they do the step 4. AA step 4 is very, very straightforward. You make a list of the people you have resentments with, and you say what your part is in it, and you list a couple of, you list what happened, and then a couple of things, how it affected my like it affected my ego, it affected my pride, it affected my financial stability, it affected, so that's a very straightforward list. The person you have a resentment with, why you have that resentment, how it affected you. And it's a very straightforward thing. I've done the AA 4th and 5th step. I've done the NA 4th and 5th step, which is a bit more complex. I've done the ACA 4th and 5th step. And I've done the CODA 4th and 5th step. So I've worked a lot of these programs and done their steps. And I think each and every one of them has their own special, I've been in the program for 27 years. So it's like, I don't know, for me, it was like, okay, I've done it with alcohol and drugs. I did that 4-step in that way, but I felt later in my sobriety, I needed to get to my codependent things. Many of you who listen to me will know that I also work on that. I just felt stumped in my AA work. Of course, it can go as deep as you want it to, but I needed other outlooks or other angles about this me, the big, the small I, that I need to work with, and to engage with others. And I want that to be the healthiest little I as possible. And the only way to make that healthiest little I possible, to connect it with the big I, which is the part and parcel of my higher power, I need to do that work. Resentments, and the thing is resentments are, it even says in a big book, the resentments are the biggest and the most, it's the killer. It'll lead us to drink again. It'll lead us to do so many things that we don't want to do and be the people that we don't want to be. Made a list of all persons we had harmed. Oh no, that's the A step. We took a fearless and moral inventory of ourselves. We took a fearless and moral inventory of ourselves. Fearless. Let's talk about fearless. This means an honest. We only know what we know. And believe me, when, a lot of people say, oh, you got to work the program, you have to work all 12 steps within the first 6 months. I know AA is like that. And that's great. But that just goes deeper. And I think that there's not much awareness, for me at least, there was no awareness about how deep my disease went until freaking 20 years of sobriety. And I'm just a very slow learner. And I thought, I didn't want to step on those minefields. I didn't want to get into all of that. When you're doing the 4th step, it brings up a lot of stuff with the family, and it brings up with all that stuff. So what do we do with that stuff? Okay, we work the 6th and 7th step after the 4th and 5th. We give that to God. We ask him to remove our shortcomings. Then we made a list of the people that we had harmed, and then we made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. So this is all preparing us to go through the program, which is perfectly placed, those 12 steps. So let me bring that a little bit into a spiritual life. If you're talking about how are we going to, so, we have all these tools in Krishna consciousness, or, in any religion, you have a lot of tools, a lot of ways to, there's certain ways of praying, there's rosaries, there's, I don't know, so many different religions with different tools in order to connect with God. And there are so many people going through the motions, chanting, doing the rosaries, doing kirtan, singing hymns, praying, worshiping deities, doing service work. I mean, the list goes on, of course, charity work and all of that. And while, yes, that comes from a good place of love, usually, the more convoluted we are with our own shit, the less we're going to be able to connect to God. And that's just not me. That is fact. It says so in any religion. It says so in any spiritual teachings. It said so in my experience, and in experience with hundreds, if not thousands, of other people that I've had contact with who are trying to live a spiritual life, who are trying to work a program. And there are certain steps that we take in order to get there. So if you want to chant wonderfully, we have to clear our heads. If we want to meditate in quiet, there are techniques to do that. And the only way we can do that is our minds are undisturbed as little as possible, which is my experience. I can't say this is fact, but I don't know anybody who could just completely turn their minds off. Our minds are every morning, are when I wake up, the moment I open my eyes, the thoughts start. it says so in Ecclesiastes, it's like controlling the wind. It's just not possible. So if we're coming from the right place, then we have all we need is if we have a good intention, we're honest, open-minded, and willing, right? Honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. When we're coming from a place of honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness, we're gonna be able to achieve a lot. We don't have to be experts. We just have to approach it with that mindset and an open heart. God doesn't want us chanting a million rounds without connecting once. That's not what he wants. I'm sure God appreciates what we do and try to do. But let's face it, why should we spend 2 hours a day doing something that's not effective? So if we want to do these things effectively, we need to cleanse ourselves of bad thoughts, samskaras, traumas, emotional struggles, ego. I mean, all of it. I don't think that, I really don't think that I know anybody who's been able to tell me that they've chanted their 16 rounds without disturbance. I don't think that I've heard that from anybody. Now, that's not saying don't do it, give it up. But I've heard a whole lot of people who want to, and I've heard a whole lot of people who strive to, and I've heard a whole lot of people who can chant a great 1 round. And this is what we're doing. We're trying to cleanse ourselves. We're trying to connect to God in every way. And that's what we have to do, because if we're not connecting with God, we are connecting with the freaking material world. And this is, let's face it, for me, this is a dangerous place. I just get into trouble. I get into trouble. When I veer away from my spiritual connections, which are through actions, when I get away from that, I literally fall back into old behaviors. And I don't want to do that, because it's not good for me or anyone else around me. So, my lovies, do some step work. Grab somebody, anybody, do some step work. They say you can, just pick up any 12-step literature, the one that you relate to. Pick it up, read it, give it a chance. It works, man. It works for me. I was like, I don't know, when I did the 4-step, when I did my first 4-step, I had heard all this stuff about it. It was like, you hear it like when you're in the program, like, oh, the 4-step, oh, the 4-step, oh, the 4-step. And everybody's so afraid of it. Don't be afraid. Fearless. Don't be afraid. It's only good. It's all good. All right. I hope that helped. If anyone has any questions about the 4-step, there's so much information online. And also, you can reach out via email. bhaktirecoverygroup@gmail.com. gmail.com. That's bhaktirecoverygroup@gmail.com. All right. Looking forward to the next step, which is step 5. We're plugging along, guys. We're plugging along. This helps me just as much, I hope, as it helps anyone here. So, have a great one. And we'll see each other soon. Haribol. This concludes another episode. Thanks for listening. In order for me to serve this community to the best of my ability, I welcome feedback. Please write your feedback at bhaktirecoverypodcast@gmail.com. That's bhaktirecoverypodcast@gmail.com. Also, please don't forget to follow and give us a 5-star rating. Share this with family and friends. If you'd like to join our Bhakti Recovery community, or just find out what we're all about, please visit our website at www.bhaktirecoverygroup.com. That's www.bhaktirecoverygroup.com. There are no dues or fees.
and we meet daily. If you or someone you know is struggling with addictions and/or associated behaviors, you will find links in our show notes to various 12-step programs. Nobody seeking recovery need ever be alone again.
सर्वधर्मान् परित्यज्य मामेकं शरणं व्रज.
The miseries of material existence and the most hopeless conditions of life is the best possible opportunity to turn to God.